Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Perlmutter from Quantum Listing, and thank you for joining us today on our webinar with Tyler and Maureen from Resquared. And our topic today is how to turn 6 days of prospecting into 60 minutes with Resquared. So, as most of you know, I am a commercial real estate broker in addition to being the founder of Quantum Listing. And like most commercial real estate brokers, I'm really cheap. And so put that out. And and if you're a real estate broker and you're not really cheap, let me know, and have I got a deal for you? So, in any event, uh, for me to like invest my hard-earned money into a real estate technology, it's got to be pretty special. And I don't remember exactly how I first heard about Resquared. I think maybe Maureen from their team reached out to me, or Tyler, and I got a demo, and I was like instantly saw the value in this. And I don't want to give too many spoilers here, and I'll chime in when I can, and I'll give you a few more reveals as the webinar goes on. Um, but I want to thank Tyler and Maureen for being with us here today, and of course all of you real estate brokers who I know your time is your most valuable resource. Um, so thank you for spending some time with us. And Tyler, I'm going to let you and Maureen, I'd like you to introduce yourselves to our group here today, and then we're in your hands.
Beautiful. Maureen, why don't you start and introduce yourself real quick, and I'll get the slides ready to go here.
Perfect. Sounds good. Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen. I am leading customer success over at Resquared. I've been on the team since beginning of March. So, we were just talking to Tyler and I the other day, and some companies, that's really not a very long time. But, since we're a startup that's quickly converting into like a really amazing company, 5 months, it feels like a really long time in our world. So, I'm managing lots of customer relationships, making sure everything works really smoothly for everyone and that everyone is getting success out of Resquare. David was actually one of the first people that I onboarded when I first started in March. So, I'm in good company with him for sure. And I'm really excited for Tyler to show you guys how much time you can save in your prospecting by using this tool.
Thank you, Maureen. And so I'm Tyler, and Maureen is very humble, but she does an amazing job of serving all of our clients and really being a leader of the customer success team. And I think David and Julian and others are examples of that. And I got some good news for you. This is not going to be a sales pitch. This is going to be a value-driven, some insights that we've learned as a team working with, lots of brokers and landlords, especially with the pandemic hitting us and everybody having to figure things out digitally. I hope you walk away with some value on this call. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, to Julia's point, you can throw it in the chat. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and say hi. At the end of the day, I'm here to serve you guys, so I want to make sure it's valuable for what you're hoping to get out of it. So to jump into it, our website is just re2.ai. So if you want to learn more or potentially get involved, just mention Quantum Listings on the demo, and we'll make sure you guys have a little bonus. But again, this is not a sales pitch. This is a value driven. So I'm going to skip that other slide that shows some of the people we're working with and go right to the agenda here. So what I'm hoping everybody on this call gets out of here is, number one, we're going to go into what we believe to be the future of our industry and prospecting in general, of one to few being better than one to many. And we'll touch on that in a second. We're also going to touch on how technology and tools can help eliminate a lot of the administrative time and make you more effective. Like David said a few minutes ago, time is the most valuable asset and resource. We want to make sure you make the most of that. Last couple of things we'll touch on is how to make your outreach more effective. I have a metaphor that I personally believe helps articulate how to be effective around that, and dating is the metaphor that we'll touch on here in a minute. And then we'll touch on how to get more responses from your email. And then lastly, why Facebook and Instagram Messenger is the holy grail of our space. So I'm going to do my best to not read slides off to you guys. I want to make this a conversation, but I got a few topic points to touch on. So the first thing is, think about the last time you opened your inbox. And everybody on this call has probably checked their email at least a dozen times today, right? And I know when I'm in my email, I'm in defense mode, right? Who's trying to waste my time, right? Or I'm also thinking, who's trying to spam me, right? You can tell if an email has been sent once, 50 times, or to 1,000 people, right? So what I want to encourage you to think about is what is your frame of mind when you're in email, right? And you have your guard up, right? You're making sure to quickly skim, right? You're not going to read every single word. You just want to know what's in it for me, and you'll quickly delete it or ignore it or actually respond. And I think that brings up an important point, which is the one to few versus the one to many. So in my personal opinion, I believe that the future of our industry and any industry, frankly, is there's so much noise in our world today, right? It's so easy to click one button and send an email to 500,000 people, right? I believe that the way to be effective is one to few, not one to many. So what I mean by that is, instead of sending out a blast, if you have a property that you're working, right, or you have an office space that we talked about earlier that you're trying to fill, instead of sending an email potentially to 5,000 brokers and hoping that someone happens to know someone that would be the space, you might be behooved to look at the 50 chiropractors, right, that would actually fill that space. So my point is going from that one to few is much better than one over many. Now, another angle of that as well is by going from one to few versus the one to many, it allows you to be more targeted in your messaging, right? And we'll touch on that in a little bit. But if I'm trying to send an email to, for example, 5,000 restaurant owners, what's going to resonate with a coffee shop owner is going to be completely different than might resonate with a multi-unit coffee shop owner, right? And so it's all about being more effective with your messaging, which we'll touch on some more here in a minute. Now, the next piece is how to save time with administrative tasks. So I'll touch on this a little bit, but in my opinion, this is one of the biggest value adds of Resquared, is ultimately technology is there to help make your life easier, right? I know a lot of my friends that are in residential real estate are seeing what's happening with Zillow and all the crazy stuff there and worrying about the future. And in my humble opinion, technology isn't going to replace humans. Technology is just going to eliminate the monotonous tasks that we do and allow us to be more effective, right? And so I believe that some of the challenges here in our niche at Resquared is local and regional tenants. They're extremely hard to find the contact information for. Sometimes they can be flaky, they can be difficult to get a hold of. They can, a lot of the times, frankly, not know what they're doing when it comes to real estate, right? They're just trying to, put one foot in the front of the other and keep the business afloat. And it becomes really difficult to stay organized in doing that. So the piece about this is, with Resquared, instead of sending out, that blast of 5,000 people in less than 90 seconds, you can make a targeted audience of, give me the 50 chiropractors in Los Angeles that have the best reviews, right? And you can do that without leaving your desk or your couch, depending on where you're working remotely from. You can also use Resquared to reach out within the product, right? Because anybody on this call that's been in commercial real estate, and David, I'm curious if you could speak to this too, if you want, is lists are like the kind of like the secret code of our industry, right? Everybody's like, oh, I got a list of this. I'll send you a list. You send me a list. And there's all these lists exchanging of, I know the tenant rep broker for Bojangles or whatever. And what ends up happening is it's very miscombobulated, right? It's hard to stay organized, right? You can have all the data in the world, but if you can't stay on top of what you do with it, it doesn't actually matter. So I don't know if anybody on the whole call has any experience with getting lists and then actually being more overwhelmed with the list than without it. Would love to hear your thoughts. But I think that's something that will resonate with quite a few of y'all.
You're right about lists sort of being good currency in our market. You'll find that the sharing of lists doesn't happen that often. At least between different offices, maybe within offices it happens more. And my experience with Resquared so far has been pretty incredible. I mean, the first thing that I'm trying to sell a restaurant building in Mohegan Lake in northern Westchester, and the first day that I was using Resquared, and I put together my list for this, and there must have been 850 restaurants or so that were surfaced within a 25-mile radius of this. And from that first day of like sending these very targeted emails, I got 2 showings from it,
Wow.
which was incredible. Neither of them have converted into deals yet, but there's hopes. Brokers, in addition to being cheap, we're all optimists. So hope springs in the broker's mind. So I can, from my own experience, corroborate what Tyler is saying, that if I just sent, and I'm sure that I have sent this restaurant out to my list of hundreds of brokers and didn't get a single showing from that, but from doing this very targeted approach and going directly to the tenants, it was incredibly effective.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that, David. And what I want to do is, this is going to just be like a quick 90-second to 3-minute overview of the product. Because again, my hope is that you're getting value out of this, and that might make you interested in learning more about Resquared. But this is not meant to be, purely a pitch around Resquared specifically. So I'm hoping we'll get some nuggets sprinkled in there as well. Can everybody see my screen here? I just want to make sure before I jump into it, my screen share is working. Could somebody give me a verbal thumbs up, please, if you don't mind?
Yes, I can see it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. So what I have here is I have an example I have pulled up outside of Philly, Levittown. And so essentially how the product works, just to give a broad stroke here, is there's 3 value props. The first value prop is, let me get a very targeted audience. And that was exactly what David just alluded to there in the restaurant example. The second value prop is also what David alluded to, which is what they. So reach out to them. And then the third value prop is it tracks all your work for you, right? So you don't have to put together spreadsheets to send to property owners, or trying to stay on top of who you reached out to. So the first thing you would do is you would pull up any property you're working in Resquared. And we focus, like I said, on the local and the regional, with retail and some office as well. So I can come in here and I can search, for example, dentist. I'm gonna find all the dentists in the area. And let's say I'm going to go to downtown next week to knock on some doors, right? And do some in-person work. I can move my pin to anchor wherever I'd like, right? So here I can focus in downtown. I can also add in exclusives where maybe I'm looking for a restaurant, but I already have a sushi operator in that center. I can add that as an exclusive. Or if you're looking for tenant reps, you could just search, the whatever specific use you're looking for. And once you search, you can narrow that down, right? So now what I can do is I can sort by their RE2 score, which is how good their reviews are, because we know sometimes, these local and regional guys, might not have the apt to want to open more locations. And so you can look at those that already have good success with their customers' reputation. Then we also have a feature here that looks at how many locations do they have. So everybody on the call knows, right? If someone has 2 or 3 locations, to get to 4 is infinitely more likely than 1 to 2, right? So the point is I can get very targeted in my search, and I can sort by how many locations they have. Once I've narrowed down that audience, I jump into my list, and like David alluded to sending the restaurant folks an email. I come in here, whatever email I'm logged in on the product, that's who it's going to appear from. So let's say I have, a second-gen restaurant space available. And what's key here, guys, just to get into a little nuggets of insight, is if you're sending the same exact email to everybody, that's the biggest takeaway on this call, is you need to tailor it for the use. If you mention restaurant or you mention chiropractor or whatever the use is in the subject line and in the body, if you come back to my presentation earlier, the spam filter guard a restaurant, they know that you didn't blast this to everybody. It must have been restaurants, right? So the more you can tailor it, the better. And what we're going to do is we're also going to mail merge in their business name And we're anti-blast, right? We don't want people spamming. We want these small businesses to get the same respect that these, the Whole Foods of the world get. Is you're going to send the emails very quickly, but you send them one at a time. So here I can come in here, I can tailor. Maybe I go to this place and, P.S. I love your cappuccinos or whatever. It's a coffee shop. So you can tailor it individually, or you can just send out the same email. But again, it's tailored for the chiropractors, not for everybody. So I've narrowed down my audience. I've reached out to them via email. It's going to track my work for me. So it's going to track that I reached out to them so I can stay organized with who I've reached out to and when. And it's also going to track if they're opening my emails as well. So there's a really strong correlation where these number of opens correlates to levels of interest. So instead of picking up the phone and just dialing for dollars, ad hoc, you can rank order those that have been engaging with your information so far. Any questions of what I've covered so far? I want to make sure I'm not just rambling for everybody on the call. I'll give a quick pause here. Any questions?
Yep. So far, so good, I think. But
Beautiful.
I'm just one guy. Anybody
Cool,
else?
cool.
I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. So
Perfect. I will keep rolling. And I'm notorious for saying, does anybody have any questions? And then I just keep talking. So, feel free to just interrupt me. I'm here to serve you guys. So once I reach out to these folks via email, and this is another thing we'll touch on, and might even be something that I would love to hear Maureen chime in on as well on the social, so we can kind of approach that together here in a little bit. Is, as we know in sales, right, it's all about the persistence, and it takes more than one touch point a lot of the times, right? And so here we've already sent them an email. We can also send them a Facebook message as well, and I'm going to touch on with Maureen on why Facebook is so effective. So we'll kind of jump into that here in a little bit. But my point is that I've narrowed down my search. I've reached out to these folks, and our emails on average get about a 40% open rate. Now, I'm curious, anybody that's done, like David, maybe in that email that you sent out to your hundreds of brokers list, what would you say like your open rate was on that, just ballpark?
it was probably somewhere between 40 and 50% for that.
So what we're finding is that that's really high. I'm impressed that you're getting that high of an open rate. On that's typically what we find is about a 40%, and then we find about a 10% response rate, which is obviously the most important, right? If someone's reading your email but not engaging with it, it doesn't matter. And so the example David used earlier of the restaurants targeted email versus all of the brokers getting actual responses was more effective that way. So lastly, now that I've narrowed down my search, I've reached out to my target audience, what I can do is I can look at my activity report. So for here, if I'm working with any property owners, right, on the landlord side, I can simply select certain properties that I'm working or certain lists, and I can export these results. So that way I can share my activity without having to manually put together a spreadsheet. So I don't know if anybody on the call wants to share their, kind of experience today in putting together reports and kind of, how they go about doing that today. I'd be curious to hear any thoughts, but our goal is to automate, like I mentioned earlier, that manual admin process while also helping you stay organized. We can export this as well. So like I said, I can export this as a CSV and simply upload that into, any CRM you're using, Salesforce, VTS, et cetera, et cetera. So the last thing I want to underscore with Resquared as far as the demo goes is we really pride ourselves on our service, and I think Maureen is a shining example of that, is that we onboard everybody one-on-one, right? And teach people, instead of sending emails that look a little bit like this, they should maybe look a lot like that, because at the end of the day, when you send an email like this to a local retailer or medical use or office use or whatever, this is likely going to end up in their spam filter. So we teach you on different methodologies to be effective, as well as with Facebook as well. So that is Resquared as an overview. Again, I want to get back into the actual value here, but if anybody has any questions, please just chime in at any point. So I'm going to go over the dating metaphor here next, which I hope this resonates with a few of you guys. And then Maureen, if you're cool with it, I can have you touch on some of the Facebook stuff, and then we can continue on from there. So I believe that prospecting is a lot like dating. And what I mean by that is, if you were to just walk up to somebody at a Starbucks, right? If you were just to walk up to a stranger at Starbucks and say, hey, do you want to go on a date next week? How are they going to react, right? They're going to be pretty freaked out, right? They're gonna be like, whoa, like, who are you? Like that, super uncomfortable, right? Now, as a new dad and a married man, it's been a while since I've experienced that, but I can appreciate that, if you jump right into asking for a date, that would be called being a creep, right? Being a little bit of a creeper. So in my opinion, the true way to be effective with this is a lot of people, I believe, when they send out emails, and hopefully this will help with some email conversions, is your goal is to take them to the next step, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if anybody's in the history of brokerage sold a deal to somebody from a first email, right? I don't think that happens, right? Maybe it fell out of the sky and hit one person, right? But it's going to take some engagement. You need to get them to move on to the next stage, right? And so the next stage, what David alluded to earlier, is getting them to come visit the property or meet with you, right? And so what I recommend is, instead of overwhelming them with a bunch of information about the property you're working or why you're so great, ask them a question, right? Do you have any plans to relocate or expand? Right? As well as, I have a second-gen restaurant space available that I think would be great for you. Do you have any plans to relocate or expand? The difference in that question versus, hey, do you want to go on a site tour next week? That's like walking up to the girl at Starbucks and being a creeper, right? So what you want to do is you want to move them along to the next stage. Now, one cool thing that one of our customers, actually, Kaylin, who's at Weingarten, she actually had the idea of doing a open house where she would say, hey, I'm going to be at the property next Wednesday, 1 to 3. If you want to meet up, I'll be there, right? That, I think, is a good example of, you don't want to push them, right? So think about it. The next time you go to send an email, are you being more of a creeper, right? Or are you actually prospecting the way you should, right? Would you respond to your own email? Would be something to consider. So I'll touch on some more email stuff, and then we'll get into the social here. So I mentioned a couple of these here, but I want to underscore these. The targeted audience, instead of just a generic list, is huge, right? Where the list might be long, but the quality is crap, right? Where at the end of the day, everybody's got their spam filter, in their own mind, plus their spam filter of their email happening, where you got to make sure it seems and comes off as targeted. Secondly, specifying the use is an amazing way to get a more increased open rate. And then lastly, I touched on how we teach that sending that first email to that chiropractor or coffee shop or nail salon or whatever it is, gym, if you include a bunch of links and attachments, what's going to happen is when you send that email, it gets converted into HTML, which is basically a fancy way of the code, right, of how it shows up in your inbox, and it gets flagged as spam more often than not. So if anybody on this call uses Gmail personally, does anybody on this call use Gmail personally by any chance? I don't know if anybody has.
Not I.
No. So on Gmail today, if you go into Gmail, it'll show you there's a primary inbox, there's a promotions inbox, and there's a social inbox. So already today in Gmail, if you're going to send something with the flyer on it, you better believe it is not showing up in that primary inbox, right? And so I believe personally in the future, it's going to be harder and harder and harder to get into that primary inbox. So the more fluff, the more blasting, and the more links and such you put in the email, the more likely that it's not going to get delivered. And ultimately, if they don't see it, then you probably wasted your time. So use a target audience, specify the use, tailor the message, and do not use links or attachments in that first email. So I want to ask a quick question, and then Maureen, if you want to help chime in on this, because I know you did a really good webinar with our customer base last week on this. Is anybody on the call have any experience with Facebook prospecting or Instagram prospecting? I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts around that, and would love to hear your insight.
Well, while we're waiting for others to chime in, prior to this, being a dinosaur, I never really prospected using Facebook Messenger. And Maureen said, no, you really got to do it. And I'll let her tell you why she said I should do it. And I'll just say that she was right. It does, So, take it away, Maureen.
Oh, thank you, David. For many of the reasons that Tyler's brought up already, multiple touch points, of course, is huge in sales, right? We always say that it's way more worth your time to be sending a small amount of people multiple messages, multiple touch points, than it is to have a huge list and hit everybody up one time and then just hope that they will decide to get back to you, right? So Facebook is a huge part of that multiple touch point effort that we really suggest. But I think one of the biggest things about Facebook is that it's just way less inundated than email is. Like Tyler mentioned, when you're in email, you're just automatically in that defensive mindset, and you're automatically feeling like, okay, like what emails can I delete? What can I put off? Who can I get rid of in here? You're trying to clean it out because you're getting so many things every day. In Facebook, these business owners are getting way less messages there. So, again, way less inundated place. Also, on each business page on Facebook, there's a section where it rates your average response time. So for the business owners who have these Facebook pages, it's actually to their benefit to respond to you, because they want to keep that amount of time in between a message coming through and getting a response as high as possible. So completely unlike email, they're incentivized to respond to your message. And another thing that I find really helpful on there is that usually it is the business owner who's on the other end of the Facebook page. It's going to be the restaurant owner who's taking a break and checking their phone and seeing that some sort of Facebook message has come through. They're way more likely to read it. They're way more likely to respond to it. It's usually a direct line to the business owner. And, we make recommendations, like maybe send a round of emails first, and then after that, send a Facebook message if they don't respond. You can kind of think about what's going to work best for you and your style there. But I would say that if you aren't using any social messaging to do your prospecting, you are really, really missing out on a huge opportunity to get those conversations started. I've heard of people making deals straight through Facebook without having sent them an email at all. It's just started on Facebook and they were able to take it all the way through to getting a deal done. So it is definitely very powerful.
Thank you for sharing that. And one interesting fact that I learned from a colleague is that more cars were sold on Facebook Marketplace than were sold on cars.com and, Car List and all these other websites, Carvana, blah, blah, blah. And, one question we always get, Maureen, you'll probably know when I'm going with this. What's the most common question we get about Facebook? And what's your answer if you know what I'm talking about?
Oh my gosh. I mean, a lot of people are are like, oh, I don't want to use this because it's a work thing. And I don't, I feel like it's not business-like for me to be sending a message this way. And I feel like the response back to that is that, again, people are not in that defensive mindset when they're reading these. And that also, if they're in a more like open social mode, that they're going to be way more likely to read that when they pick it up, because it's usually friends and family who are writing to you on Facebook, right?
So
definitely, please, you guys, please don't, as a favor to me, do not create a second business Facebook profile. Just use your personal page. Even if you have weird feelings about it, you want to separate business and personal, you can set up your privacy settings so that they don't see a lot of stuff. That's fine. But we have had so many problems, sadly, with some of our customers creating a second account, and Facebook does not like that. They see that you have two accounts and two representations of yourself, and they immediately think something fishy's going on here, this is shady, and then they will shut down both pages. And sometimes it can take a month or more to get reactivated there. So please, you guys, don't create a second page for yourselves. Just use your normal personal one.
And if you have trouble with your organization embracing social media, sick Maureen or me on them, and we'll convince them, because the proof is in the pudding. So thank you for sharing that, Maureen. I think that's another big takeaway from this call is if you're not doing social prospecting today, absolutely give it a try. You'll be blown away. And we typically see usually around a 30% response rate on social channels. And what's interesting is Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger have merged into one messenger. So it's an opportunity for you to get ahead of the curve before it's too noisy like email is right now. So hopefully everybody on the call walked away with a little something today. And ultimately, we're here to grow. We're here to serve. And so if anything that we talked about sparked your interest and you see there might be a fit in learning more, what I'd ask you to do is you'll go to our website. So it's just reu.com/podcast. resquared.ai, and just fill out a request access or a request a personalized demo. And then when you talk to someone on the sales team, make sure to mention the fact that you heard about it from this webinar, and we'll have a little bonus for you by doing that. So one thing we like to do as a fun thing is for people that stayed on for the whole time on the webinar, got a little game for you. If the first person to chat what their address is and what their favorite pizza is, we will buy you pizza party tomorrow or Friday. So if anybody's still on the call, and if you chat your address and your favorite, what you want on your pizza, the first person to do that in the chat, we're going to pick the best small business locally that sells pizza, and we're going to have them deliver you pizza tomorrow or Friday or whenever you want. So someone take me up on that so I don't look stupid. Somebody chat in there, Howard or Steve or Michael, please chat. If you don't want to share your address, great point, Julia. You can email me, Tyler@re2.ai, because I think that's going to be the only way I can get you something delivered is to have your address. But if you do Tyler@re2.ai, just say pizza and what you want in it. Whoever takes me up on that, the first person will get pizza on our treat. Curtis Shaw, my dog. So Curtis, what do you want on your pizza? Last piece. What do you want on your pizza?
Yeah, Curtis.
You a pepperoni guy? A veggie? The works.
Oh, the works.
My dog.
He's already picked out Papa John's.
I love it. Well, Curtis, we will make sure you're taken care of. I will take a screenshot of that and make sure we get you taken care of, and we'll get a good contact so we can make sure you're aware of it as we get it shipped and figure out if you want it tomorrow or Friday or even today if you want it. So you're the man, Curtis. My dog. Thank you.
To borrow that one in the future.
Curtis, if you could send us a picture of the pizza, we would really appreciate it for evidence, just to know that, we know they're follow-through people, but we just want to know.
Thank you, guys. Well, I want to say a special thank you to David and Julia for giving us the opportunity. And obviously, we pride ourselves on serving our customers, and for them to give us this forum to share what we're doing and share their successes means the world to us. And so very proud to be working with you guys. And hopefully everybody's having a good summer. And thank you so much, Maureen, for joining us as well.
Hey, Curtis, can I ask a question? How do you get your data points, I guess, in the retail stores or the office tenants surrounding the points someone would look for?
Sure. So I could address that because I think Curtis is watching, and I can share that with you, Howard. So the way we get the data is my co-founder and I, unless that was a direct question to you, Curtis, and I could be mistaken, but I'll address it real quick. So my co-founder and I both have started tech companies in commercial real estate before. So you guys know there's a big learning curve for commercial real estate, and a big learning curve for tech. So we've taken this fragmented market of, you have like Yelp and Better Business Bureaus and Chambers of Commerce and Secretary of State data and all these different Facebook and all these different data sources. And we've aggregated it into one, Howard. And then what we've done is we have user-driven components of it. So we are always continuously adding to our data. And then we've built some algorithms that help you sort the data. So are they a chain or not? How many locations do they have? What's their reputation? So hopefully that gives you a better idea of where we're getting the data. And the good news, Howard, is for all new customers, we start with a 3 or 4 month pilot. So you'll be able to actually experience the data firsthand without having to commit long term.
Thank you.
And let me, just sort of, go back to that restaurant example. Before I started using Resquared for the, I would go on to like Zagat.com and try to find the restaurants or, do different internet, and then I had to like source, the email addresses, and I would spend, a couple of hours trying to get, 50 email addresses for restaurants, and this really, streamlined it, so amazingly that, and it's so efficient, and you do see that feedback. And then, when I do get a lead, then I'll add it into my CRM and, deal with it that way. But it really was, revelatory. And, not that, Howard is, a colleague. I love working with him. I like, most of the brokers in my market. But the holy grail is to have both ends of the transaction. So to the extent that you can source tenants and not wait for one of your colleagues to bring somebody, that much the better. So it really is been a fantastic investment in my business. So.
Thank you for sharing that, David. Any other questions, guys? Like just the fact that you guys are chatting and asking questions made my day. So if anybody has any questions or any thoughts or whatever, I'm going to put my personal cell phone number and my email in the chat here. So feel free to call the bat line and hit me up anytime. And yeah, we're looking to treat people right in this industry and serve, and it's crazy that you can build a $1 billion company and not treat people right. I'll let you fill in the gaps on who that is. And we're hoping to build a big company treating people right. So any way we can serve, let us know. And I'll make sure to give you guys the bonus if you do decide to engage with us because you heard about us through this experience. So thank you guys for the opportunity.
And Michael, in answer to your question in the chat, there will be a replay available. We should have that out in the next couple of days, if not sooner.
Yeah. And Tyler, your guys and Maureen, your fun fact should be you guys are the first commercial real estate tech company to serve pizza as well.
Woo! All about the service, all about the service.
Pizza.
We like our gifts around here. And if anybody have any other questions or thoughts, guys, we'll make sure we get the recording and really appreciate the engagement and everybody stayed on the whole time. So must have been something in there that was hopefully useful. So thank you guys for your time.
All right. Thank you guys. And we'll see you on the next webinar. Take care.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Take care.
We'll stick around for a minute if anyone has any more questions. Sometimes people like doing the one-on-one and
Sure.
the recording, I'm assuming.